Hey there everyone, it's JC. Wreath arrangements on cards carry infinite worth for your recipients. But did you know there are easy composition rules you can follow for even more visual interest and impact? You won't believe how easily you let these artistic hacks pass you by. Keep watching to find out what they are. For my first Wreath card example, I'll start off really easy and basic by using the Blossom Wreath stamp and die bundle. We'll use this very simple shape and layering set to illustrate this first technique to really amp up your Wreath cards. I'm going to die cut this panel, so I'm first going to stamp the outline in one of the inks in this 6 mini cube set. This is the Jewel Tones 6 mini cube ink set. And I'll first start with green onyx. Once I get a solid impression of the A layer in Blossom Wreath stamp set, I'll use green opal ink to stamp the C1 and C2 layers that coordinate with this wreath. After stamping the foliage, I'll use Rhodolite to ink up the B layer. Then I'll finish off the D1 and D2 layers with red jasper ink. I'll use the coordinating Blossom Wreath die to cut out this image. And then I will set this aside while I work on the next element of my card. I'm going to protect my filming surface with the Altenew silicone stamping mat. And onto this mat, I'm going to use 3 of the inks. So I'm going to reuse green opal, raw amber, and tanzanite. And I'm going to do a little bit of ink smooshing on here. I'll start with green opal and apply a light layer of that. A little bit of tanzanite. A little bit of raw amber. Then I'll use the Fine Mister misting bottle. I'm going to suspend the ink on my silicone stamping mat. And then on another panel of spicy yogurt cardstock, I'm going to take my paper to the ink. Want just a little bit more water. There we go. I'll take a heat tool to this and let it dry quickly. I've wiped off my silicone stamping mat and my panel is mostly dry. I'm going to apply more tanzanite and more raw amber. And then I'll use my heat tool to dry this again. I don't want this ink to go to waste, so I'm going to use a water brush and take the ink and add speckles onto my ink smooshed background. And I'm being quite liberal with this. And then on another panel, spicy yogurt cardstock, I'll add just a little bit, concentrating on the center of my cardstock. This will act as my background for this entire card. Once my panel is dry, I'll use one of the new die sets from November 2021. That's the Tree Mix die set. This is a mix and match layering tree die set for really interesting scenes. And I will pick 2 of the solid tree dies and run them through my die cutting machine. And then from the offcut of the Blossom Wreath die, I'll use some of the supporting layer dies and run this through my die cutting machine. Once I have my supporting layers die cut, I'll glue them down to my ink smooshed trees. Before I assemble anything, I have all of my elements so far laid out on my craft mat. And I just wanted to illustrate something really quickly. I know that typically it's really easy to put a wreath right into the center of your card, as well as the supporting sentiment. And this makes for a beautiful card, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that. But the point of this video was to make a little bit more interesting compositions using techniques that you may already know from other floral card techniques. I think a lot of asymmetry looks beautiful in a wreath arrangement. And the nice thing about this wreath layering stamp set is that it's already asymmetric. But we can enforce that by layering other elements onto the wreath, just like so. And now that I have a focal point on this bottom right corner of my wreath, I feel as if this is a good asymmetric place to add the sentiment. I assembled this card and added a few embellishments like the metallic thread and antique gold sequins, but that finishes this first asymmetric arrangement, focusing on focal points on your wreaths. So now you see that we've taken the weight off the center of the card and pushed it over to one side of the wreath, and it just makes a little bit more of an interesting arrangement. So what if your stash doesn't include a wreath layering stamp set? Well, there are other ways to make wreath type cards with what you have in your Altenew stash. So the next perfect pairing, I'll be focusing on the Craft Your Life Project Kit Elegant Motifs. This is new for November 2021. And I'll show you a way that you can use your existing floral outline and layering sets in a creative way so that you can still get a wreath type arrangement. If you get the Craft Your Life Project kits, you'll also get its coordinating die set, a layering stencil, and an embossing folder, but I will forego this embossing folder for now for this project. For now, I will use just the outline stamps and my Altenew craft mat to plan my next wreath arrangement. Now you'll notice that these images are quite large, and it'll be hard to encompass the entire circle onto an A2 sized card front. However, there are ways to illustrate a circle or a wreath without actually having a complete circle. So here you'll see that I formed a quarter of a circle on my planned A2 card front, and this will still create a very continuous and flowing arrangement on your card front. So now you have many opportunities to add your focal sentiment anywhere along this visual line that you create. So let's get started with the crafty piece. So I've planned for these 3 images, and I will go ahead and, well, why not? I'll just use another panel of spicy yogurt cardstock. And onto my A2 sized spicy yogurt cardstock panel, I will begin stamping the 3 images I planned. I'll use another set of unreleased inks. So these are the Frozen Delights mini ink cube set. And this is a beautiful contrast to the previously shown jewel tone ink set. And I'll start with orange sorbet for these outline images. Now that I have my outlines, I'll work on the next layers to these images using the 4-in-1 stencil included in your Craft Your Life project kit. I'm simply following the layering guide in the Craft Your Life project kit stamp set trifold. And for this next layer, I'll use strawberry. And I'll also use the mini blending brush set for these really small areas located in the stencil. For a little bit of texture, I'm applying ink in certain areas of the image. In this case, I'll apply a heavy layer around the perimeter of this flower, and then more concentration towards the bottom of these top 2 flowers. And I'll play around with this sort of gradient throughout the floral piece. For the solid leaf layers, I'll apply mint chalk. And I'll keep working on stenciling the rest of these images on my panel. Once I've finished stenciling these images, I'll work on the coordinating stamp layers for the leaves. And I'll stamp the detail layers in the leaves in blueberry ink. So now that all of my images are stamped and die cut, I can get them back into that arrangement that I had planned earlier. After fiddling with the arrangement more, I found that this was a little bit appealing as well, so I think I'll stick with this for this card. And of course this wouldn't be a perfect pairing without an accompanying Altenew favorite. So I have the Altenew Fine Frames rectangle die, and this cuts out really narrow frames. Now just like the previous arrangement in creating asymmetry, you can also work on incorporating other shapes into your wreath. So I have my quarter circle here, and then I can anchor it with a rectangle. And I thought I was going to use another panel of spicy yogurt cardstock as my background, but recently Altenew featured their washi tapes in a fantastic blog hop, and so I have my washi tapes out still on my desk. All I have to do is adhere it to an A2 sized panel and trim off the excess. And I'll use my Altenew Teflon bone folder to burnish the washi tape onto my panel. Once I adhered my washi tape background to my folded note card base, I arranged and foam mounted my flowers on top of the Fine Frames rectangle die. I added a little sentiment strip as well as some lilac metallic thread and some essential white enamel dots. And this card is a more obvious example of combining two different shapes. So here I have my main floral circle that doesn't encompass the entire card. And it is anchored by my Fine Frames rectangles that help frame and enforce my sentiment and focal piece here. And that finishes my two examples of amping up your wreath type arrangement cards. So just as a recap, here's my asymmetric arrangement to create more interest on your card front, as well as combining two shapes to anchor your focal sentiment. My series encourages you to shop your existing Altenew stash and rekindle their love with newer releases. Perfect Pairings with JC airs on the Altenew channel every second and fourth Sunday of the month. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Perfect Pairing episode with me, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hello crafters, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching!